who has lived in Bangkok before and moved back to India. So this person said, which was very interesting to me. He said that you can get both first world amenities and third world privileges. So what he meant by that was your housing, your amenities within your say condominium building, your tax packages, your infrastructure to an extent are bordering on first world, while you can get, for example, in the US, you can't get help, right? In Thailand, there's no problem getting help. It's not as expensive.
Hello, all. Welcome to a new episode. This is a very interesting episode. It is going to be the three of us. It is myself, Siddharth, and Ishan. And in this episode, we are going to talk about what should one think or what should one approach the way of moving different countries, but as jobs are moving to a different country for a new job. So we have an example among us. It is Ishan. He is currently on the move from Singapore to Thailand.
So I will be relocating very shortly from Singapore to Thailand. It's been a lot of pre-work that has had to be done, a lot of things that have to be taken care of. You also realize how quickly your life can settle into suitcases. But and how much you gather over time, which has been my focus for the last couple of weeks, is just collecting everything and deciding what needs to be carried and what needs to be thrown. So it is hard work, but exciting to be trying out a new place. Exciting, I've been here now for almost a decade, so it is just exciting to start house hunting again and looking for new stuff. Open a new bank account, learn their problems and nice things that Thailand has to offer. So just looking forward to that. And yet, I'm sure you guys will have questions on the prep work that goes into it more from a financial perspective. Where I'm happy to answer anything. I don't have all the answers yet, but at least I can talk about the process I've been.
I know that's precisely what we'll be asking you about. But okay, let's start with the more basic things, more trivial things. On when you made the decision to move, what was the within? So you're moving for a new role, new job. How was the discussion around housing? Because I think that's the first thing you tend to think about. भाई रहेंगे कहाँ? So were you offered a place, temporary relocation place, where you had to find something straight away? And if you, in either case, have you done some prep work on where to stay and what would be the general rental there?
So that is I think one thing that took me by surprise. So I'll start from the because I am relocating as a foreigner to Thailand. I'm considered an expat, which means that they will allow me some settling in period, which is pretty standard across most places. Even when I had moved to Singapore the first time, it was very similar. They give you 1 month of accommodation, which is kind of like a service apartment where you can stay while you look hunt for a place. Most companies will also provide you with some mover and packer services, which will help you with, or even if you get one of your own, which will basically help you with, you can move boxes of stuff that you want to carry with you. And that will be sent to you, but that takes time. So hopefully you will be able to find a house in that duration and then they can move and send the stuff over to your house. So that is the basics of it. In terms of identifying where I want to live, the thing that surprised me was I had assumed that moving out of, a very developed economy like Singapore to developing economy such as India or Thailand would have been significantly cheap. So the one myth I want to bust, it's not significantly cheap. It's cheap. Yes. You will be able to, for the same price, get better housing. But also that when you're living in, you started living outside, when you're living in, so I spoken about lifestyle inflation before, you reach a certain point where you're used to a certain level of amenities and you're used to a certain level of housing which you are living in. So when you want to go to another country, you also want to at least get, that is your benchmark. I want at least these things when I move into this place. So suddenly you realize when you want all those things, it is not as cheap as you want it. So it is not, I mean, relative terms, it is, I don't think housing is cheap. It is not expensive. It's
Percentage बताओ sir. कितना
I
percent
mean, you
कम है?
you can spend anything between 20% to whatever you want. There is no end to it. In terms of uh, rentals, the high-end rentals, there are practically hotels giving out apartments rent for more than what you're earning. So there is no end to the rental market. I saw this was more fun exercise like I'm going to stay in a very nice place. I want something for ultra luxury when I'm moving there. And then I realized, no, let's bring our expectations down because ultra luxury is not what you can afford right now. But like just for fun, if anyone's listening and they want to get excited, check out any of the five-star hotels that you can think of, any names that come to your mind. Check out the fact that they will have an apartment in Thailand, Bangkok, and then just look at their pricing. It will be like the facilities are mind blowing, the apartments are great, prices are also mind. Whether you want to buy or rent, they are absolutely out of this world. So it is practically very similar to what you would probably end up paying in a US in a metro US city or in Singapore. But then you also realize you're buying not Singapore or US city. You're buying it in Thailand, and then it depends on your long term plans of whether you're staying there, how long you'll be able to stay there, because you're always dependent on your employer when you're going out there. Uh, so all those questions start popping up. It's a question of how much do I want to spend. I ideally would not want to spend more than 1/4 of my salary on living expenses. That is uh, because what what I could take.
Very interesting. ठीक है. After housing, the second main thing, and I know that you have not yet moved there, so you might not have the exact answer. The second thing is food. Roti kapda makan mein roti. I don't know if you have a approximate idea of how much your monthly expense in
I hope you all look right at that. Just give you guys an idea of food in Thailand. Luckily, is not expensive, but again, can be depends on how fancy you want to get. But relatively, Thailand is the one thing I have learned, and this is again top was there or who have that, is that Thailand or Bangkok particular is a market where most people don't cook it. So it's a very common thing, even for local folks, to be picking up food while going back home from what in Singapore is considered hawker center kind of places. But in general, there's a lot of these shops you'll see across the street where you'll be able to just pick up food and take back home for everyone. And this is something that was told to me by a Thai person. So I am not, this is not my opinion of it. This was their opinion of their own market. So it was interesting, which also means that that food is affordable. Like food in general is affordable. Depends on how expensive you want to make. From other sources, what I've learned is Thai food is very affordable. General. You want to go to more exotic cuisines, or you want to go outside of the Thai and maybe even just local India, can become expensive. So it kind of varies, but the range kind of varies from between 50 bahts for a meal to 500 bahts for a meal, right? But again, that I'm not putting an upper limit on how fancy a meal could get. I'm putting an upper limit on if you went to a normal restaurant, two people were sitting there, could go up like 500 baht and more. So that's kind of where I'm putting an average there, saying I'm going to spend 2 meals a day at least. Like say breakfast and supper management, like small grocery spend. So lunch and dinner is what I need. Like I'm spending about 500 because I'm taking the upper end of everything right now. Let's say an average of 500 baht depending on a meal. We can do the maths on 60 meals, 500 baht. That is good. Whatever.
मेरा
I-
मेरा एक जेनरिक क्वेश्चन है कि आपको क्या लगता है कि बैंकॉक में प्रोस क्या होता है कि अभी किसी को मूव करना है तो आपने जो रिसर्च किया होगा कि मैं उधर जाने वाला हूँ क्या बहुत चीजें बहुत अच्छा है क्या चीजें इतना अच्छा नहीं है
See, Bangkok, I'm going to quote someone. I'm going to quote someone I met in the India office of my company who has lived in Bangkok before and moved back to India. So this person said, which was very interesting to me. He said that you can get both first world amenities and third world privileges. So what he meant by that was your housing, your amenities within your, say, condominium building, your tax packages, your infrastructure to an extent are bordering on first world, while you can get, for example, in the US, you can't get help, right? In Thailand, there's no problem getting help. It's not as expensive. So you can get help. You can get like someone who can come cook, clean, and do everything, which is relatively cheap, which is cheaper than Singapore. So that perspective, that cost goes down. That is one way of looking at it. They do have a reasonably well connected city, but they have traffic issues, for example, which is something we have seen back in our hometowns, which we don't often encounter in Singapore except F1 weekend, which is when we're talking. But that that is it's still good because you are reasonably well connected. They have two public transport systems apart from buses, so they have a BTS and an MRT. I don't exactly know the difference, but I know when I'm looking for housing that I have to be close to either one of them so that I can reach my office, if even in case of rain or a traffic jam, without being stuck somewhere. So that is kind of what, and I know we'll come to housing at some point. This is one of the criteria कि घर किसी public transport के पास में होना चाहिए, नहीं तो completely become dependent on your Uber and Grab. And actually, I don't think Uber exists. Grab is the one that exists here. You kind of become dependent on them, and we've all had issues one point of time or the other when either pricing is crazy or availability is not there. So you would rather also have a primary option of public transport, secondary option of this. It is also a country that is full of malls, very like Singapore. So you will find everything you need in most of the malls. It's easy because then you have everything in kind of one place. Uh, that is again something I look forward to, and you can find all variety of stuff: cheap clothing, expensive clothing, brands, non-brands. So there is a very famous mall in Bangkok called Platinum Mall. It's quite a while since I've been there, but I'm looking forward to going back there because that mall is basically like any Indian bazaar that you walk into. It has everything and all price points, and you can haggle as much as you want. You can bargain, and you can get stuff for real. I'm looking forward to living the India experience. One last thing, which I think is relevant for everyone, which was also a key decision making thing for me, is based on the kind of company you're going to work for. So if the company has a relatively large capital investment in Thailand, they have special benefits for expats. So this is more a Thai government policy to encourage foreign talent to come into the country. They basically, and I don't know if there are other benefits. This is one benefit that mattered to me, was they have a flat tax policy for expats coming in above a certain level. If they come in, then there's a flat tax of 15%. So which my options were for from moving from Singapore to other places. Like obviously the Middle East has no tax. That's amazing. But if I was to look at other countries, then comparing it to India versus Thailand, that made a lot of sense.
Interesting.
This is interesting. Yeah. The tax thing is, I didn't know that. Okay.
I'm telling Thailand to more people who would want to move there. We need a bigger expat community. Please do consider it.
मैं सर बहुत गलत चीजें भी सुनी है बैंकॉक के बारे में, तो हम पूरी
Not
तरह
focus on that. That is, what I am assuming is that those things in Bangkok are limited to a certain area, not everywhere.
do that.
Every time I
But
visited
there is-
Thailand, it has been amazing. But I'm looking forward to hear your experience, the person living there, rather than just visiting.
What I am looking forward to is the fact that compared to Singapore, Thailand is obviously a larger country.
Yeah.
So what
It is
that
more
also,
than Bangkok.
so
smaller.
it is, yeah. So
Yeah.
so what that opens up is the opportunity of weekend trips within Thailand,
Yeah.
which doesn't need me to worry about visas and figuring out how expensive the trip is going to be. It can just be a last minute decision saying, "बहुत पक गए, कहीं जाना है." So you pack your bags and you go out for a couple of days to a beach, and Thailand has amazing beaches, right? So even from Singapore, I was at least once a year, I was going to some place in Thailand. So this is going to be hopefully easier and cheaper to plan those trips within the country. That is something I am looking forward to.
एक
But
ऐसे में
thing in the country is going to be, I'll let you know क्या challenges है.
ये बहुत अच्छा suggestion that I can give you is that for this new year, because we'll be in Bangkok, make a trip to the Koh Samui Island, which is known for its New Year parties. and I'm sure it's a good place to be there.
I have to currently worry about how do I pay my deposit and my rent for the first couple of months. एक बार मेरा वो सब sort होता है, I'll plan out my new year also. I wouldn't mind spending my new year at because I'll be taking up a new place. So I would. This is more a personal conversation. I don't know why we're recording this, but I wouldn't mind spending my first new year in my new place, just seeing how things go around back up as well. But there is a possibility that pack your bags, go somewhere. So go somewhere is definitely on the list.
Acha, in terms of, again, this is, so just for the audience, we will have a follow-up episode when Ishan moves to Bangkok and has a fair idea of the expenses there, and we'll do a proper cost of living episode with the Excel sheet like we did for Singapore. But even before that, in your research, did you have an approximate idea of the percentage saving that you could make? So we did this with Himanshu and the Dubai episode. Uh, uh, तो if आपको थोड़ा बहुत आइडिया हो कि भी थाईलैंड में इतना % of your income will go into saving.
So the way I'm looking at it is, if I'm saying 25% goes into housing, because this is an example. This is what I'll find out when I go there.
Mhm.
I'm assuming the remaining expenses are close to percent would be higher. So I already said food will be about $500 a meal for 60 meals right now till I get someone to come home like that. Hopefully cook at home, because I can cook to survive, but I can't cook 60 meals in a month. I don't think I will manage. So we'll hopefully I'll figure out who can come and can manage the kitchen. But then we'll have to spend on help, like I said, in terms of cleaning. So cooking, cleaning will become one portion. So that will impact those costs versus eating out costs. So if I'm balancing all of this, I'm kind of expecting that between travel, because again, traveling by local transport, by public transport is under 100 Thai baht per trip. So it could be 50, 60 Thai baht at most per trip. Could be as low as 30. That depends on how far I'm staying from my place to work. So primarily travel is going to be between work and work. Uske alawa, anything that happens is over and above. Considering that, considering food, considering any uh, domestic help that I may get, that all put together, and food, whether it's eating out or groceries, I roughly took a 20% on top of that. Now, 15 obviously goes away in taxes. So that is a clear, definite number that I have. So I am then assuming, if I, for everything else, for every, everything in terms of not necessary spending that I need to do, or plus saving that I need to do, that is, I have about 40% left. But that, again, it depends very heavily on where I am putting my money. All of this obviously is taking in just your base salary and not any other bonuses or anything else in mind, because those happen, but none of that is guaranteed. Don't know which way the market. So right now, all I'm depending on is कि मेरे को हर महीने कितना पैसा आएगा और मुझे कितना पैसा चला जाएगा आते ही. If I'm considering that, I'm guessing about 40% is what I can play around with in terms of savings versus investment.
एक सवाल है सर, maybe I misunderstood one piece. तो आपने बोला 25% रेंट, 20% इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, इंटरनेट, 15% तो एनुअल है टैक्स, राइट? नॉट ऑन अ मंथली.
Same होगा ना,
Item-
कटे 15% या साल कटे 15%. Like basically your
कैसे? सॉरी,
In-
नहीं
15%.
नहीं ना सर.
15% whether you take away from your monthly paycheck or take away on your annual, you're taking away from the same base only.
नहीं, पर अगर आप हर महीने 15%
ये
पे चेक
15
नहीं होगा ना.
नहीं होगा, बट 20 और 25 तो साल का कन्वर्ट हो, तो ऐसा ठीक.
I mean, whichever way you
Um,
look at it, I mean, overall my expenses, whatever I'm getting from you're saying 15 goes on overall comp, not just the monthly salary. Is that what?
नहीं 15, आई एम सेइंग ओवरऑल एनुअल कॉम्प.
Yeah. So it'll be it'll be higher, but then I'm not considering the rest of my bonus or any stock or anything as part of my monthly thing at all. So जो भी उसमें से
Right.
कटेगा, that goes away from that.
उसमें से ले लिया.
I was only talking about my salary. So whatever is my monthly, I'm talking about that, उसमें से I expect 40% roughly is what I should have to play around with. जो बाकी कुछ अगर आएगा, कोई बोनस अगर आया या अगर कोई स्टॉक ग्रांट हुआ या कुछ, whatever that comes in is like separate. I'm not, for now, I'm not touching that. That obviously becomes, but that only happens once a year. So that becomes a separate pool, which depending on where, if I've overspent somewhere, then that compensates. Or if I have more money, then I have more to invest. But that kind of is my separate.
God. Okay. Finally, or at least finally on my side, we already, before recording, we were talking about you not having enough information on the markets in Thailand, the capital markets. तो उस पे अपन follow up episode में बात करेंगे.
The only thing
जहाँ
I
पे
know is the only two things which were interesting to me were I can open a bank account the day I land. So I'm assuming my office will have to be paid for work, but I can then go walk into a branch and say I need an account because I will need an account to get a salary. So that will have to be open, but I don't get a credit card till I have built up some history over there. So what I have been told is to wait 6 months for applying for a credit card, which will mean that since we were talking about what is the pre-work that needs to be done, that when I move from here, I will keep my credit cards for a bit, just for any,
Singapore.
yeah.
Right.
So just for any spending that I may need to do, which will increase my cost by a bit because when you're using one country card and another card, for most cards, there is a markup that happens. But there are some cards in the US which I've heard which don't care about foreign spends, which don't mark up. So if someone from the US is hearing this, they may not be familiar. But in most other countries, when you're traveling, your credit card charges a markup on your spends. There is some money that you spend more. And also, I don't think it is as convenient moving money in and out of the country as I had expected. Because again, Singapore is quite convenient moving to India. And I actually haven't moved from India here, but moving to India is quite easy. But there are, again, the same startups that exist everywhere else in the world, exist in Thailand. There are ways to move money around if you wanted to, legal ways of moving money around. I'm not suggesting anything else. For like there are TransferWise or Wise as it's now called, or I mean by Western Union. Even your banks can do it, but I think there are some limitations, plus bad rates and that banks offer. There are better ways of getting this done.
Right. In fact, even in the credit cards, wouldn't you consider a Wise card or a Revolut card
Can.
over
But I think
this?
I assume there is a credit bureau, and since I will have no history whatsoever, I may end up getting a low limit card or a. It depends. I'm not sure. Like I'm talking from a very bank perspective on how they issue credit cards. You need to have some history. So even if you have a direct relationship with them, unless you're already bringing in millions of dollars, which I'm not yet bringing in, so they would not consider you a high net worth individual who will get all privileges of the bank. They need you to build history with them, for which from what I hear is 6 months right now. But again, that could vary. So I'm not sure. Exactly क्या होगा? This is दूसरों से सुना हुआ है अभी तक है मेरे पास.
Got it. Cool. Madhvesh,
I think
any
we have
questions
covered
from your
all.
side? अभी तो कुछ सूझ नहीं रहा. Ishan, nothing that you'd like to add in to the
No,
research
it's
piece?
just I would recommend everyone does a deep cleaning of their house regularly so that when you have to move, एक बार में नहीं करना पड़े. It is a very cumbersome process. And you also realize you've kept so many things which you were like, हाँ इसको बाद में देखेंगे. And then it's been lying there for 6 years and you haven't looked at it ever. So which is why do that cleaning once in a while. Like you can keep your house nice and clean. नहीं तो you tend to hoard a lot of things that are not important. And then when moving, it becomes a problem because ये कहाँ packing है.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing all these tips, Ishan. I'm sure this is going to be valuable and I'm going to hear more from you once you make the move. So thanks all for listening in to another fresh episode.
Thank you.